In a country school on a mountainside, a boy and a girl are viewed with pride by just two fathers and just two mothers. How strange this all must seem to others. In this land of ours, with its furious pace, are these two students out of place? From a school so small and not the best, can they compete with all the rest? Does a city school, large and new, form finer pupils than these two? No, 'tis of mind and out of heart that makes a pupil stand apart. In days gone by, in a school like ours, humble lads spent many hours, and somehow arose to lead us through times of peace and peril too. Barbara and Joe, in this school, it is here you learned the golden rule. I feel that knowing such as this gives you a value others miss. Maybe I am the old-fashioned kind, call me that, I don't mind. To me a school like this so small really is the best of all. Leo Sue said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Throughout its many decades, the significantly historic community of Mountain Brook, Montana, has been a haven for adventurous pioneers and their loving families who followed their dreams, aspirations, and visions to live in these dwellings upon a mountainous terrain. These literary, trailblazing settlers of Montana worked together to form a prosperous community while encountering numerous physical, emotional, and environmental obstacles created by a turbulent environment, unknown natives, and neighboring settlers. Through their efforts, the Mountain Brook community represents the journey of 1,000 miles that begin with one step taken by thousands. In the year of 1862, President Abraham Lincoln declared the Homestead Act. As a result, pioneers found themselves crossing America in hopes of creating prosperous settlements. 27 years later, Montana was established as a state on November 8, 1891. Towns such as Missoula and Kalispell in northwestern Montana began cropping up. Towns such as these laid the foundations for regional economic centers. Among the many who chose to devote themselves to colonizing Montana were the Browns family. Abraham Brown filed a line deed in 1891 signed by President William Howard Taft, which can now be seen at the Flathead County Courthouse in Kalispell. Tracts of land and new homes were built. Growing families with children required a place to learn. 1 acre was given to the community by the Browns in agreement that they could retain the land as long as it was well maintained and used for educational purposes only. With the supplies and hard-working hours of the joint community, a simple log structure was completed by 1908, which consisted of a class of 9 students and their teacher, Miss Frances Leary. Elementary education was offered until the 8th grade. Then if students chose to further their education, they would go to Flathead County High School in Kalispell. However, in those early years of school, most chose to stay home and work on the family farm or business. While in school, students were also expected to perform daily chores that were necessary for school operation and comfort, such as boys would carry wood and water from nearby and girls would prepare the classroom. The Ladies' Club allowed power and prestige into the pioneer community through a club built on giving the women within the community a moment to separate themselves from the constant stress of home and life.
You just have to help one another, that's all there is to it. There is no other help. And they wouldn't have access to a doctor necessarily. You have to be pretty injured or need lots of stitches to go to a doctor. Most moms or a neighbor had a smattering of first aid in their pocket to be able to help. They delivered one another's babies. So women have always pooled together, whether they agreed or disagreed, politics, religion, or whatever, but they have always helped one another. And I believe from hearing the stories in the community here that that's what it was like here too.
By 1927, a second school was necessary for more than 20 children received an education in the small log classroom. Once again, the community came together and built a 2-room school across the street from the original, alongside a teacherage and an outhouse. The Ladies' Club joined and provided meals and a set of hard-working hands when needed. Communication from Big Fork and Kalispell was received through a Forest Service telephone at Abraham Brown's house near the school. The main workforce in the area was through farming and agriculture. A local garden from the Arno family was known by all people in the area for its 16-pound cabbages and apples. With the apple trees from the Arno and later the Smithson family farm, apple cider was annually made in support of the community. Also, families in the community picked plentiful mountain huckleberries that were sold on Foothill Road, which goes through Mountain Brook. The locals held peace with the native Salish tribe in the area through trade and information. They traded animal furs and weapons. The natives traded information on the surrounding area of the Flathead and knowledge of natural medicine. There were two main mills in the area where most men worked. The Krause wood mill, created by local Adolf Krause, supported many and had great business throughout the Flathead Valley. The second mill near the community was the Creston Flour Mill, which is now a fish hatchery. Throughout the years, problems developed in the world and the United States that affected the community. Between 1929 and 1939, the Great Depression struck the community greatly as local sales dropped and men were laid off of work, leaving families, even in the small establishments, struggling. Then on December 7, 1941, America entered World War II. Men were left no choice but to leave their families and join the American forces. Women in the community encountered an extreme traditional change as they were left to work the entire farm and supply their family with what they needed. But as always, the community stayed and encountered the harsh times together. However, the war concluded and the community continued in its usual ways of life. Technological advances trickled into Mountain Brook. For the first time, in 1946, the Mountain Brook School had electricity which brought light and connecting heat into the building. A playground was soon assembled and trees were cut for more running space. In the year of 1955, Mr. Joe Kaufman created Mountain Brook's first basketball team along with the first cheerleaders who excitingly supported. The team practiced in an old barn by the school. The proud community remembers the team did well because they practiced by dodging the many leaks and puddles. In later years, the boys won a Valley Championship that brought pride to the community. A gymnasium was built for basketball and physical education by Mr. Pinky Muir in 1968, and later a library was added on. Mrs. Trablick also organized musical education, bringing orchestra and choir to the students. Every year, they played in concerts at the school and for 8th grade graduation. Along with the many performances that were in the school, theater was a favorite in the community as students got to be whomever they wanted and adults got to enjoy watching their children have fun.
Member of a family by the name of Sagan lived up beyond me, and they had just built themselves a new house. They'd only been in it a few weeks, and it caught on fire and burnt to the ground. And we got together and supplied them with just about everything they needed to keep going. Luckily, they had the old house there yet.
Yeah.
And so we could give them whatever they needed to get started again. And so it was really a very helping bunch of people.
Throughout the next 20 years, as modern developments entered the community, the people of Mountain Brook rode the wave of culture change through the turbulent 1960s, the flamboyant 1970s, and the pump glam of the 1980s, but always stayed true to their values in their little mountain home. However, as the populace grew in the area, Mountain Brook School was outgrown. In 1995, a final decision was made after many months of dilemma, and the Mountain Brook School consolidated with Cayuse Prairie District in Creston. Soon after, the school was only used for the community social events and science experiments in the woods. 6 years later, Mountain Brook School was in disrepair, and many residents complained that the historical value of the community was being wasted throughout time. As a result, the Mountain Brook Homestead Foundation came together and made the decision to rent out the old school building for $1 a year. Mountain Brook School renovation fundraisers occur several times a year. Events such as craft sales, pie socials, and pumpkin carving contests invite the Hardy community together even today to give thanks to a little mountain school that solidified a community and embraced the riches of the people, the land, and a little-known Mountain Brook.